Good day, friends. Miloa here. Today I am with Rachel Simpson, and she is the author of Dragon's Calling. Welcome, Rachel. Can you introduce us to Dragon's Calling and your world and what you are up to?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. So I am so thrilled to introduce you all to Dragon's Calling. So Dragon's Calling is the story of a young dragon. And where this story started was I was at an event where a woman from Japan was talking about the tradition of dragons in Japan. And she made this comment about how, isn't it funny that you just see so many more dragons in the East? Well, maybe that's because we never tried to hunt them down. And I was like, oh, I want to tell that dragon story. And so that one comment was what sparked this whole world of dragons who are wholehearted and who love the land. They care for the land and the animals. And then what happens when they clash with the aspects of humanity that want to control the land and control magic. And so that was the start of this whole world. And in Dragon's Calling, we meet Aubrent, who is a young dragon who, like me and maybe many of us, has these big dreams,
Mhm.
and she's trying so hard to get to her dreams and to get permission to do the advanced dragon training, to become a guardian, to care for the land. And the answer that she's been getting for like 3 years is not yet, not yet, and no one's really telling her why. And so in Dragon's Calling, we meet her at a moment where she has an opportunity to maybe prove herself that she's ready to start formal training.
Oh, how exciting. Um, your love exploring inner powers and choices that change the world. How does Dragon's Calling explore those ideas?
Absolutely. So for me, I think every single one of us, we all have these amazing gifts and abilities and perspectives that have us give something different to the world. And I think that's true for every single person on the planet. And what I love, the books that always have moved me in my life and the books that I want to write are books that help people see that in themselves through the characters. And so, in Dragon's Calling specifically, we have a young dragon who, at the beginning of the story, is kind of feeling down on herself. She's starting to doubt, like, her abilities. Is something wrong with me? Why aren't they letting me move forward? And she has an opportunity to really overcome that through her friendship, through her caring, through her love. And it really is that inner ability that she has, that her care for the elementals, her love, her heart, her wholeheartedness, that really starts to take center stage in the story.
So does perseverance come up in the story then?
Definitely, definitely. Perseverance and also, I would say the ability to see different perspectives as well, and the ability to look at the world with new eyes. And I think that's one of the things I love about writing fantasy that's geared more towards a younger audience and an audience that I would say is young at heart. Because I think there's always room for all of us as human beings to grow, and that perseverance and that willingness to do that is, I think, one of the things that makes that whole genre of fantasy for younger readers and those of us maybe nostalgic for our YA fantasy favorites.
Mm.
I think that's one of the things that has it really stand out.
Yeah. I watched a Facebook video yesterday about the first US Marine, US Army officer, um, that became Miss USA in
Mm,
2017. And she had entered pageants 8 times, 8 years. She lost 7 times, but she went back that eighth time and ended up winning the whole thing. Um,
amazing.
and that was just due to sheer perseverance and keep going and keep learning. And I was reflecting back on my own life and, how I'm launching my first book on Kickstarter and all of that. And it just feels so overwhelming sometimes. But
Mm.
perseverance, showing up every day, putting the words on the page, getting the story told, doing the work, doing your time. Really, that perseverance is what pushes the boulder up the hill. Um,
Absolutely.
and I think that that is such an encouraging story that we all need to be reminded of daily as we face our own struggles.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I love that. The whole, I think it's the kind of thing where oftentimes it's so easy to see folks who are really successful
Hmm.
and to think that that's all that there is.
Hmm.
It's just, oh, they're really successful. And I remember someone saying to me once, well, I wonder how many times they failed to get where they're at right now. And that's the kind of thing that I think, and it's so accessible because it's
Yeah.
like, oh man, how many times have I fallen on my face in my life? Like
Yeah.
so many times, so many moments. And it's like I thank goodness the baby me didn't give up on walking, just because I didn't get it the first time.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And now we
Exactly.
can run and skip and jump and do all these other things.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, because I every baby I've ever known has fallen a lot when they're learning to walk.
Yep. Yep. So, as a physician and scientist, how does your connection with nature and science play out in your magical worlds?
I so love that you asked this question. So for me, I am someone where I never really understood when people kind of pitted science and STEM fields against the things that were creative.
Mm.
I never saw an opposition in that, even when I was younger, because to me, when I look at science, when I'm learning about kind of how the world works, whether it's a cell or a mathematical principle or something out in nature, to me, there's such a wonder in that.
Mhm.
And that's something that I think I've tried to really bring into the magical system is the sense of wonder at just how beautifully complex and rich the world is and everything that's in the natural world. And so um, when it comes to Auburn's world and how the dragons experience it, what I ended up doing was bringing it out through song. So she hears
Mm.
kind of the harmonics of what's happening in the outer world. That was my cat, sorry. um, so she hears, when nature's in harmony. She hears when something is off,
Mhm.
and she can feel it like kind of this beautiful chorus. And to me, that fits so well with just like the rich complexity of an ecosystem. You have all of these plants and animals, and they are helping each other and feeding each other and growing together and
Mhm.
creating this whole community that wouldn't exist in the way that it is if it didn't have every single piece in it.
Too true. Too true. So Operant is a young dragon longing to be a guardian, right? So what does
Mhm.
being a guardian represent in her world and to you as an author?
Mm. So in her world, being a guardian, she has lived this life where in the valley that was born in, it's always just been her and her mother in terms of dragons. So they may go visit family somewhere else, but really the model that she's always known is looking at her mother and what her mother's role is as something that she aspires to be.
Mm.
And for her it's kind of like it's the legacy. It's what her family has always done, her mother's mother and so on and so on. They have protected this valley, they've guarded this valley, they've cared for it. And because she loves the land and she loves her home and all of the elementals there, it's always just been a natural dream for her to want to follow in her mother's footsteps and become a guardian. And there's so much, she alludes to it in the story. You'll kind of find it throughout where there's little things that she sees her mother do, but she doesn't know how to do it yet in terms of the dragon magic. And she's
Mhm.
like, oh, I mean, I can hear the songs, but like, how did she do that? I know how to do that. I want to know. I want to learn. So she wants to go and learn so that she could really step into what she sees as her calling as a young dragon.
Mm, mm, mm.
And for me as a writer, and as an author, um, I love that idea that, it can be really a wholehearted dream to want to care for something, whether it's a place or people, and to be part of building um, really a cohesive, harmonious ecosystem.
Yeah, a
So
community.
I like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Um the elemental in your story, I'm not sure what their name is, but it's described as grumpy. What was it like writing the dynamics between Abrams and then this grumpy elemental?
Yes, so his name is Elodin, and he honestly is one of my favorite characters to write. I don't know about you, but I love writing characters that are like a little bit extra. And so he's kind of like a grumpy old man. You know, if he was a human, he'd be the like the old man from Up, if you've seen that
Yeah.
movie.
Yes.
Where he's like, "Get off my lawn." But he really is kind of like a softie at heart. And so writing the dynamic between them where he's like, "Grr, dragon, they're just meddling in everything." And he's like, but I kind of like that one. I kind of like Aubrand. She's been like family. You know, he's known her since she was a baby and kind of been part of her life. And so he can't really like be mad at her the same way he could be like mad at her mom. So it was really fun to write that dynamic.
It sounds like a lot of stories are going to be lying there. So without spoilers, what is your favorite moment in Dragon's Calling?
So some of my favorite moments would absolutely give spoilers, so I'm gonna not talk about those. I'll let you read the book if you want to see that part. But for me, I think one of my favorite moments is anytime Abrant is traveling. So one of the things for her is because she's a young dragon, she has wings and she can kind of start to fly. Like she knows how flying is supposed to work, but she's not yet, her wings aren't big enough and strong enough to like hold her aloft to like fly across long distances the way the older dragons can. So I absolutely love writing her sort of like hop, glide, hop, crash, hop, glide, try to flap, hold up in the air for a little bit, hop to a next boulder. That kind of journey through the mountains is like one of my favorite things in the book is any moment where we get Brent learning to fly.
So how do you balance your day job of a physician and writing stories like Dragon's Calling?
So I would say, and this is something is interesting. I think about this, and I think about, you know, for if anyone listening has a day job that's, you know, tackles your brain in one direction, I have always found that I think my brain is better and I'm better when I kind of balance out what I'm doing. And so for me, writing actually started as a creative outlet. A lot of medicine can feel like learning and using a different language. You know, it's like there's a lot of information that we know. Yes, there's innovation. Yes, there's things that are moving the practice of medicine forward. But a kind of the day-to-day, moment to moment, it's kind of taking it's like detective work. It's taking the knowledge that you have and figuring out what to do with it and how to employ it in a way to serve the person who's sitting in front of me. And that's totally like a different part of my brain than the
Mhm,
part of me that just loves to be creative and to
mhm,
create stories about dragons. And you know, so I think for me, writing has become kind of like an essential um I don't know, creative food would be the word I guess I would use. And so it's made it easy to kind of do a little bit of both because the writing so like nourishes me on like a soul level. And I think it, you know, it's I don't know, I feel like I'm a better physician and a better writer for doing both.
yeah.
So
You
then I
need
would
that release valve, right? That's what I call it.
absolutely.
So I wrote my first fiction book when I was writing my thesis dissertation at the same time for my PhD,
Mm,
which that was in applied physiology. So it was also very medical, very scientific, you know, writing computer code, doing data analysis, all very, very heavy on that side. That at night when I had to go to sleep, my brain would still be buzzing with all that technical stuff that I had to switch it off. And my way to eventually switch it off was to start writing fictional stories.
I
Um,
love
and that to me became my release valve during those 6 months that I was like in focus mode. So when I graduated, I literally had a fictional book and a thesis at the same time. People thought I was crazy that I was writing two things at the same time. But you know, you sometimes you if you're an extremely creative person like we are, you have to have that release valve or you
absolutely.
can't function in the other realm as well.
I totally agree. I totally agree. I love that you did that. That is so cool. It's like, I'm curious, did you feel like your creativity impacted like the thesis side of things as well? Like doing the novel
Mm,
on the side?
probably. I mean, it helped me think about how to creatively present my data and my information. Um, but I, it was so far removed because it was like a science fiction fantasy book compared to mathematics and engineering and numbers. So there's very little overlap contextually, but motivationally, it did affect me a lot to keep going.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I love that. That is so cool. I feel like there's I don't know, 'cause that makes me think 'cause I think I was saying before we started I just read your book. Um, and it makes total sense that you're working in physiology now knowing that. I was, like, reading it being like, "Huh, this is really cool." There's a lot of, like, really interesting, like, engineering twists in this,
Hmm.
and, so that's so exciting.
Yeah, my
Very
whole
cool.
world building around the Enchanted Sky series
Oh,
is very heavily engineering and elemental system overlap. Because I know myself and I think like an engineer. And so I was like, okay, how can I leverage that in what I write and what I do? And so I decided to focus my book on Imagineering, which is the marrying of the two. And from that, everything else is kind of springboarded, and is kind of growing into its own whole thing, which is so much fun to watch. So, do you have
that's
a specific process with writing your magical creatures, your magical world, and the dragons, and how to make them relatable and real?
yeah, so, I don't know that I would say have, like, a process that's super well defined. But I know for me, kind of where I start with it, because I tend to be a little bit more like intuitive when I'm writing.
Mhm,
But I think when it comes to dragons and elementals, for me, one of the things I love in fantasy and sci-fi both is, you can have characters who are not human on the outside and they have like a humanity to them
mhm,
and their perspective of their culture or their background informs how they see the world. And so for me, I think, with Abrent and with Eldon both, I draw on my experience as a human being to kind of inform how they are.
mm,
So, when we kind of the next book from Dragon's Calling forward, we're gonna follow Aberrant as she's kind of starting to try to navigate the human world a little bit. And again, there were so many moments I remember growing up where it felt like, "I don't understand how this is supposed to work. Everyone else seems to understand how this is supposed to work when
yeah.
it comes to, like, social rules or culture or,
Mhm,
like, puberty, the body changing." It's like, "What's happening? No one asked me if I wanted this right now." And I thought, that kind of perspective, it feels so, um just so human, but also something that, is so much, um, would be so much more present, if you were born in a dragon's body, you
yeah. Yeah.
know? And then suddenly being like, pants? How do pants work? Like, what is this? Um, so I think for me, kind of drawing on human experience in
Mm,
terms of having characters be relatable has been a big part of it. And I actually think that's been one of the most beautiful things for me being in medicine is I get to meet so many people
mhm,
as part of my work. And so, I don't bring anyone specific into it, but I think meeting so many people has given me, it's informed how I understand how people act and how
yeah.
people are with each other in a way that um, I have so much respect for
Mhm,
that bringing that into the fantasy it just feels natural to kind of bring all those different aspects of what it means to be human, what it means to have thoughts and feelings,
yeah.
even if one is a dragon or an
Yeah.
elemental.
Yeah.
So,
I guess how I can relate to that is that I'm originally from South Africa and I live here in the US. And when I first came here, everything was new. I didn't
mm,
understand the culture. I spoke the language, I spoke English, but with a very thick accent. And people would keep saying, "Can you repeat that? Can you repeat?" I heard like, "Can you repeat that?" like 50 times a day until started to learn how to adapt my language and my
mm,
pronunciations to the American style. Because
mm,
in South Africa, the British style is every little word, every little consonant is clipped.
mm.
While here in the South, in the US, consonants are dropped all the time. So, getting used to that it might seem very minor, right? But
It's
it
not
was
though.
a communication barrier. Um,
I
and I was 19 at that time, and it boggled my mind just how different it can be. And so when I'm writing my stories and approaching those things, I always try to imagine, okay, what are they facing that's new and
mm,
different and scary and has to overcome in order to grow. Um, but
I
there are
love
still
that.
some days, I mean, you know, I'm in my 40s and there's still some days that I'm like, look, I'm not adulting today. But that's the Gen Xer in me coming out, being like, I'm not an adult today.
I
uh,
totally respect that. I feel like there are days where, it's like I have I feel like I'm someone where like I my body keeps having to tell me like, "Hey, you actually need rest sometimes." Because my brain is like, "What's this rest thing? We don't do that. We just keep going. We'll just go and explore and have do all these things." And yeah, so I think that's so learning to rest has been my version of like sometimes I'm just everything is a no some days. But
yeah,
oh, I totally hear you. The closest I've come with language, I can imagine I would imagine it would be harder coming from South Africa because it seems like such a bigger accent difference. But I know in my life, when I was 14, we moved from Iowa, kind of in the middle of the US, to Long Island, like right outside New York City.
hmm
And that was a massive culture shock. And the accent is very different in Long Island,
hmm
like in and around New York. That's very like if you've ever watched The Nanny, like Fran Drescher, like that's
yes.
the accent. I remember the night we arrived in New York, like we stopped at like a restaurant to pick up some food because we didn't have any food in the kitchen yet. And the guy turned and asked me something, and I didn't understand anything that he said. And I remember just being like, "Oh, I'm gonna be so scared." Anything. I think it took me a year to learn to talk fast enough to actually be able to like finish a sentence in a story without getting interrupted.
Oh, too funny. So, what is Abram's greatest inner struggle, and how does it reflect in the world that she sees around her?
So I would say her greatest inner struggle is self-doubt.
Mm,
She's like, I thought I was fine, thought I was doing okay. But her mom keeps kind of like not letting her move forward. And that started to undermine her confidence. And so she started to look at herself and be like, man, I feel like, am I broken? Like, what's wrong with me? Like, why are they not letting me move forward? And so that's something that she really has to contend with in this story in particular.
mm,
And some of that kind of will grow over time, but some of it I think is, it stays with her. And that's something that she really has to learn to value what she brings to the table, even if other people don't always see it or acknowledge it.
yeah, I think that that's a very important topic because, let's face it, we all have self-doubt. I don't think there's a person that doesn't have self-doubt about,
Yeah.
are they good enough? Are they doing the right thing? Should I made a different decision? Is it worth investing? And just it keeps going and going and going. And for those younger snap, young people out there watching this, it never goes away. You just learn how to cope with it, and you learn to turn that voice off. and keep
Yeah.
going forward nonetheless, no matter how scared you are.
Yeah, I think to me that's one of the things where it's like that's to me the essence of courage is being willing to take that step even if we feel afraid.
Hmm.
And I think, one of the things that I totally get what you're saying in terms of like it doesn't always like it doesn't fully go away, but I think um for me part of Auburn's journey, and I think I've seen it in myself and I think in others as well, is that there is something I think really powerful in starting to think of oneself and one's capacities, one's value, if you would say, as something that's intrinsically part of us,
Hmm.
that's not dependent on anything in the outside, what anyone else
Hmm.
thinks, what anyone else judges. And I am not perfect at that by any means, but I feel like I've had glimpses of that in my
Hmm.
life.
Hmm.
And that's the kind of thing that, like, man, I'm like, if I could put that in a bottle and just, like, like
Yeah.
put up a stand, give it away for free, like I would love that. I mean, I'd keep the sample for myself all the time for those moments
Yeah.
when there is kind of that
Yeah.
doubt, that hesitation, that not being sure if if I can do what it is that I say I want to do.
Yeah. Yeah. So what's next for Aubrance and you?
Yeah, so Aberrant, so Dragon's Calling is our first story. It's a shorter story, but it brings us into Aberrant's world. And this fall, I'm launching, so that this fall being fall of 2025, we're launching Aberrant's first novel, which is Aberrant, The Last Dragon of Fanayag. And that is coming out on Kickstarter and launching end of October. And after that, it will be probably by January, February 2026. It'll be available on my website and also just wide anywhere books are available. And so we'll be following her as she is navigating the human world. Because what would it be to be a dragon and suddenly find yourself trapped in human form
Hmm.
and having to learn, about pants, in addition to self confidence and human relationships and interactions. And that's one where I think I'm bringing in more kind of the healer background from the science and medicine standpoint,
Mm,
and mixing that in with magic.
cool.
So we have to follow her as she's navigating the human world.
Okay, so if Aubrance had a theme song, what would it be? And would Eladin be humming along or would he just be pouting?
So I love this. So I think in Oberyn's mind, her theme song is "I Got You, Babe" with Sonny and Cher. And if she started singing it, Eladin would be singing along and only rolling his eyes if she knew that if he knew that she couldn't see him, because he doesn't really want to hurt her feelings. But in the everyday moments, Auburn's theme song would be "Don't Give Up" by the Noisettes.
That's that's a lot of fun. All right. Well, thanks for coming for the interview today. I had a super blast talking with you. For more details on Rachel's book, please check out her website, rachelsimpsonwrites.com. And to get a sneak peek of my latest project, Broken Wings, head on over to meloescape.com. The links will be listed in the description below. Thanks everyone for watching and happy reading.
Thanks for having me.